good morning to you. We've been talking all morning about this new deal which is going to be signed today between the UK government and the EU. It's all tying together Border Force and Frontex, which is like the sort of border force for the EU bloc, if you like. It's meant to cut down on illegal immigrants coming to the UK. It's going to be signed by the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, later on today, and he joins us now. Very good morning to you. Nice to see you. What exactly will this new agreement bring into force?
Good morning. Well, look, this is a really important agreement. It takes what has already been a good working relationship with European countries, including France and others across Europe. It means we can share information quicker, share intelligence quicker, we can operate more effectively. And the reason that's important is because the EU wants to secure its external borders just as we do. So people who are coming into Europe from Eastern Europe, across the Mediterranean, the European Union wants to stop them. We want to help them stop them, because those people filter through Europe and ultimately find themselves on small boats coming across to the UK. So earlier this week, we saw in Germany a seizure of outboard motors that were destined for people smugglers coming across the channel. So it's in our interest to work closely with the EU on this. This new agreement will make that happen. It's good news for them. It's also good news for us.
Forgive me, Home Secretary, but haven't we heard and seen this all before? We've had a number of deals with the EU. We've made a number of deals with France over the years. In fact, we've spent 232 million, sent that to France since 2014 to the end of last year. How is this deal going to be any different, or is it just a déjà vu deal?
No, this is about adding on top of what we're already doing. And that deal with France, for example, last year stopped 26,000 people coming to the UK. So that cooperation is working. It's one of the reasons, part of the reason, why last year we saw a 36% reduction in small boat arrivals. The first time we've seen a year-on-year reduction since the small boat phenomenon started. So this is working. The plan is working, but we're not going to make do with a big reduction. We want to stop the boats. That's why we're doing this. That's why we'll keep doing more with France, with the EU, with the Rwanda plan, for example, to make sure we have the deterrent effect, but also that we break the business model of the people smugglers.
I mean, a lot of this has got to be about intelligence sharing as much as anything else. And although that's very welcome, I'm sure, by a lot of people, does it just take us back to where we were pre-Brexit in terms of that cooperation?
Well, obviously, when we were a member of the European Union, we were, by definition, a member of the Frontex arrangements. But we've always been responsible for our own borders. We've had Border Force officials checking the UK border, because we don't have a land border with any European country except, of course, for Ireland. So we've always had to do a lot of this ourselves anyway. But what this is about is making sure that post-Brexit, we harvest those Brexit freedoms with things like trade deals and all the other benefits that we get from leaving the EU. But we also get the bits that we value. So this is what we've always promised, which we would leave the European Union, but have a good working relationship with our friends, and they are friends and partners on the continent, when it's in the UK's interest to do so. And this is absolutely in the UK's interest to cooperate on this issue.
I wanted to ask you about the scenes in the Commons on Wednesday evening. Many would describe them as shambolic and shameful. What do you have to say about the scenes in the Commons there? And do you think Sir Lindsay Hoyle should stay in his position as Speaker, because 67 MPs have now signed that no confidence letter in him?
Well, I have a huge amount of respect for Sir Lindsay, and I've spoken with him indeed very recently on the work that we're doing to protect politicians in general and members of Parliament in particular. He has said he made a mistake, and I think he did make a mistake. He's apologised for doing that. It is my job to defend democracy, and we have a Defending Democracy Task Force, which is chaired by the Security Minister, Tom Tugendhat. And indeed, very recently, before the events of Wednesday, we'd written to Chief Constables across the country, setting out the powers that they have to protect parliamentarians, and also setting out our expectations that they fully utilise those powers to protect the people who are the voice of the British public in Parliament. It's incredibly important that MPs are able to act without fear. And indeed, I've said before, the only thing that parliamentarians should fear is the ballot box.
I mean, what is interesting off the back of all of this is the idea that there is a baying mob to which some members of Parliament are bowing. And that's reflected on, it's in the Telegraph, I think, this morning, your predecessor, Suella Braverman, saying that, you know, there is Islamist bullying now in Parliament that we saw the other night, but also across the country. And she's saying Islamists are bullying the UK into submission.
Well, obviously, I remain very good friends with Suella, and I listen when she speaks. I don't necessarily always agree with everything she is saying, but parliamentarians have a duty to do what they believe to be right, not just what they believe to be popular, and they certainly shouldn't act because someone is threatening them. The government takes its responsibility to protect British people, including parliamentarians, incredibly seriously. We are taking action to enhance that protection, and we are insisting that the police use the powers that they have at their disposal to do so. And the message that I would send is that you should not vote in any way other than with your conscience. You should use your conscience and your judgment to make decisions, and you shouldn't vote in a way that you believe to be wrong just because of fear of criticism or indeed of imitation. That would be a deep distortion to our democracy.
She raises a valid point, though, doesn't she? In that, I mean, she sort of says we're all too frightened to say anything or do anything much because we fear being called racist. And I just sort of want to reflect. It's across again a lot of the papers this morning. What was in effect an anti-Semitic slogan projected onto Big Ben last night, and the police saying, well, we can't do anything about it. You know, we couldn't stop this slogan, which is hateful and hurtful for Jews, being projected onto the House of Commons, in effect.
Well, I mean, that comment is deeply, deeply offensive, and I believe it to be anti-Semitic. It's difficult for me to assess the operational choices that were made. For example, I don't know where that was projected from. I don't know how easy it would have been for police officers to get there. The first meeting I had as Home Secretary when I was appointed in November of last year was with the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. I said that I wanted the protest policed more robustly, that the police should take action when they see racist slogans, anti-Semitic slogans and illegal actions. And they have. There have been a significant number of arrests and prosecutions as a direct result of the more robust policing that we've seen recently with the protests. And I will continue to speak both with the Mayor of London, who of course is responsible for the police force of London, and with the Commissioner directly with regard to the government's expectations that they use the full powers that they have, plus the new powers that we're giving them, to properly and robustly police these protests.
The Court of Appeal is set to rule on Shamima Begum's bid to overturn the government's decision to strip her of her British citizenship. We are expecting that. Do you think Shamima Begum should have her British citizenship reinstated? Should she come back to this country and serve a prison sentence here? Or should she stay where she is?
Well, the UK government has put our case forward in the Court of Appeal. Until the verdict is laid down, this is still technically a live case, and therefore it would be completely inappropriate for me to comment publicly on that, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Just a quick one because we've talked about all the problems in London and MPs are facing in the House of Commons and all the protests going on and the projections onto the House and all the rest of it. There's going to be a lot of renovations to the House of Commons coming up. We know it's a huge plan. It needs a lot of work. There's been discussions about taking the House round the country. Isn't it time now, perhaps, to use this opportunity especially in an election year and a turbulent time, to get the House, to get members around the country, seeing what life is like on the length and breadth of our United Kingdom?
Well, look, MPs already do travel the country. Later on today, I'm going to be going up to the West Midlands. I'm regularly in my constituency. The whole point of Westminster is that MPs from all over the country, with their experience of their local communities, listening to the voices of their voters and the people where they live, come to Westminster. They come together in a single place. And of course, you've got to remember, this is where the civil service is based. This is where all the facilities of government and parliament are based. So the logistics of moving around the country would be huge. But MPs do listen to the country, and if they don't win elections. So I understand the point about taking the opportunity to do things differently, but I think in practical terms, Westminster is where all the other elements of politics and government are based. You can't move them around the country, and it's MPs' job to listen to their constituents when they're not in Westminster.